Welcome to the Constructing a Business podcast produced by the CMC Network. The CMC, we help women and minority-owned businesses overcome the challenges they face every day through networking opportunities, incremental business development, and construction-focused business coaching. I'm your host. I'm Michael Obither. I'm supporting strategies outsourced, virtual bookkeepers and controllers. Right here in New York City, we help construction leaders build profit. Today on the pod, we have Nelson Tepfer, a returning guest, to tell us a little bit about business planning and how to use it to maximize your business growth, how to set a direction for your business, and how to accelerate your success. Welcome back, Nelson. How are you today?
Michael, thank you for having me back on. I'm doing great.
Fabulous. So, as I stated right before we hit record on this, planning, that's vague. Give me a brief, 2 or 3 sentence answer to the business owner's question. What do you mean, Nelson? What are we planning for?
Well, let's put things in perspective. For starters, just having the conversation about planning instead of just reacting to everything that comes along is probably a huge step in the right direction to begin with.
Okay.
Just having that direction. So just framing that as a first step in the process is usually a big step forward. Now, when it comes to what we think about planning, when we're talking about it from the business owner's perspective, a lot of it comes down to the clarity of where you're trying to get to. So you can come up with exactly what the steps you need to take to actually get you there. That's obviously boiling it down to the really, really simple, most basic and straightforward methodology.
Yeah, but also a best case scenario, right? Having a direction, having a sort of a mindset, if you will, as a guide to deal with challenges as they pop up, to be a little less reactive, a little less in the dark about what to do because you do have a plan. And I know, most of the people who are members of the CMC are newer business owners. They maybe are doing 1 to 3 million in revenue with big goals of growth. In terms of business development, at what level of business, in terms of maybe revenue or size, should a business consider planning, and what is the first step in a good plan?
So let's talk about, specifically for the members, the member profile that you just described, because we can actually make this both tangible and tactical as we talk about what this process can look like or should look like for them. So every level business, is the short answer, needs to go through the planning process. Or should go through the planning process. Now, when we think of what planning means, from our perspective, because for us, we're all a bunch of CFOs. So when we talk about planning, usually everyone thinks of what does CFO mean? Planning, great, just put numbers on the board and let's see if we can go do that. But when we think about planning, it means so much more than that, because we have to make it something which is achievable. We have to make it something which you actually understand the action items to take to actually get there, how you measure your success towards these goals that you set, and who in your company is responsible for it. It can be you, but it's who in your company are responsible for taking these action items. So we can give a scenario, a smaller company, for instance, that thinks about planning. We think of first that starts with the setting of goals. Now, we have an upcoming workshop where we plan on going through this with members if this is something they're interested in. I believe the dates will be shared at a future point in time. I think tentatively it's December 12th. But we plan on going through, in workshop format, actually taking companies through this process. So it starts with setting goals. We look at goals, looking at it from 5 years out to 3 years out to 1 year out. Now, obviously, you can't get very specific on what a goal looks like. But what is important in the process is the separating a goal from a measurable target. For instance, if they're a $2 million revenue company right now, the goal is not to get to 5. 5 is the measurable target of the goal. The goal can be to get into a different type of construction job. The goal can be to work for a different type of contractor. The goal can be to grow their experience and expertise. And you measure the success of that goal with a numerical target. How will we know if we're doing these other kind of jobs? Because we've hit this number in revenue. Or because we hit this number in profit. This is what I'm actually able to take home at the end of the day, which is also very useful to know. So we go through that process usually across different time zones because you want to be able to set the larger picture goals for where you're trying to go, while at the same time working backwards to make it something tactical and actionable for what you're doing tomorrow.
Right. So I want to recap that maybe for myself, but you're starting very high level, looking at the business, sure, we have a goal of getting to 5 million in revenue. Okay, whatever. But really, how are we going to achieve that goal? It's not just a matter of doing more of the same. It's building a set of goals or a goal that's specific in nature and additive to the business, perhaps. And then you brought it down another level when you described it, and you talked about operationally, what are the actions that need to happen, who's responsible for taking those actions, probably how are we measuring success at that operational level or in that position, what are they responsible for, what does that look like, and then tying it back to a revenue goal, or maybe, right, I'm in sales, maybe it's we're going to close X number of deals in that particular arena of construction this quarter, this year, right? Is that what we're talking about?
Absolutely. So exactly what you just described. And again, to take that example all the way through, the same one we're talking about, this $2 million company, which let's say wants to work on larger jobs. So it's their goal, because they want to grow the business. That is one of the things that they're working towards. So we identify what that goal looks like 5 years and 3 years and 1 year. We identify those measurable targets of what that looks like. And once we come up with those, then it's the strategies of how we actually achieve it. For instance, when I say strategy, then it switches more to the actual activity. So if you want to work on larger jobs, you need to be speaking to the people who will give you those larger jobs. What does it mean interacting with those kind of people? What do those activities look like? You're coming from a sales perspective, for instance. You know, in order to close these number of clients, these are the activities it takes to close those number of clients. So you track your own activities. You have a strategy of how you approach those activities, what your touch points with everyone is there in that process is, and you track the performance of those activities. The same thing is true at the business level, at the macro level. It's how do we come up with what those strategies are to achieve it. You want to grow your experience and expertise in doing this kind of jobs. Great. What is the strategy that will do it? It's not just the goal for it, but it comes down to how do we actually approach it. And for every company, the how can be different. Someone who's coming from a certain area of experience or expertise or has a specific niche, this is where they excel. Then the how they approach the other sides of the pieces that they're trying to get to may be different. But the process of going about it is the same.
That's pretty awesome. So here I have two questions. I'm going to ask you one at a time. The first one is from an operational perspective. When you're working through this with a client and you discover there's a gap, okay, we need to take these actions, but we don't have any skill set or anything that resembles that action currently. What is the process of filling that gap? Because a lot of companies that are growing, they're not going to be able to just hire a full-time employee. Obviously, I'm outsourced, you're outsourced. There's lots of outsourced talent. Are you helping the client or the person you're working with source that particular skill set? What's the process for you there?
So absolutely, because then it becomes a conversation of resource allocation. And that's why we get involved in this process a lot. Where are you expending those resources? And that's why we go through this process even as we approach budgeting. Because without understanding the goals of where the company is trying to go, what are we budgeting for? So for instance, if there is this gap, then it becomes down to, okay, what can we spend to help the company overcome this gap? What are the resources that are available to help the company once we understand that this is the actual gap we need to cross, now we have to figure out how we're going to do this. And again, there are outsourced talent. There's any number of resources that exist out there to help companies overcome this. Again, whether it's a sales issue or approaching this or these other kind of activities, which just no one in the company has the bandwidth to take on. But the first step is understanding where the gap comes from. Then you can allocate the resources accordingly to actually overcome that.
Right. If you understand the budget, you know what you can spend, you can choose the appropriate resource to get you over the hump. Yeah. Right? A lot of times that's what it is. So the other question I wanted to ask you, because I'm involved in a whole bunch of leadership team meetings at supporting strategies. We are constantly working to improve our own processes. And that is on top of all the normal stuff that each of us has to do day to day to keep all the plates spinning, right? It is no different for the CMC members. And a lot of times they are making a big transition from being in the field, being on the job site, to being more in the office and maybe visiting multiple job sites, assigning leadership to the various projects they're running, right? So there's this huge upheaval already. Then we're putting a plan together that's going to help them grow, but it's on top of that new role that they're acclimating to. What's your role? I know that working with Viv is big here, but what is your role in that coaching element and the mindset element related to that shift?
So it's interesting you refer to it as this shift and referring to this as on top of it. We don't see it that way. For our perspective, it's not about a shift that's happening or new things you need to do. It's the focus of what you're doing. That this activities you're doing right now is because we just identified this is what it's going to take to get you there. You choose not to do this, and again, not necessarily a choice, obviously. With small growing businesses, there's always lots of things to get done, and usually you're the only person to do this. We get that, but it's understanding these are the activities or action items that are actually going to help you achieve your goals. For instance, you need better bookkeeping. Everyone thinks, well, why? It's just another expense. I don't need better bookkeeping. No, you need better bookkeeping so you have better insight into what's happening on your performance level financially on your company on a regular basis, so you can make the decisions you need to continue to grow and run your company. If you take out the why you need the better bookkeeping, then everyone just looks at it, oh, it's just another expense, we don't need it.
Right.
So it's the same thing with many of these activities or this kind of approach. If you take out the why, the how just becomes a burden. If you understand why you're actually going ahead to do this, why should you be spending more time in the office? Not because you're not good at being in the field, you're great at being in the field. You built your company by being in the field. But you're spending more time in the office because this is where you're trying to take the company. And you cannot do that if you remain in the field.
That's beautiful. Now, I maybe made a tactical error in describing this as an additive process. But I'm going to, maybe for a lack of vocabulary, I'm going to do a similar thing. So we talked about that shift from in the field to in the office, or just a shift, I guess, a change. And this being, a direction change for the business and a different focus and all that. Are there things that business leaders, other than not being in the field, need to let go of? Activities? How do you help people identify the actions and activities that maybe aren't as valuable, and letting them go to free up time and resources for this particular goal or direction?
So first is, yes, this is a very common challenge with growing companies and business owners and leaders in these roles. So as companies, they'll grow and mature, and that doesn't mean that, they need to be 50 million in revenue before they get to this level of growth and maturity. But as companies are looking to grow and mature, it is truly recognizing what is the impact of their time. It's not a question of their just expertise, but the impact of their time. Again, of course, this person is great at running job sites. If they're a contractor and this is how they built their business and experience and expertise, they're always going to be great at running job sites. But is the impact of their time different than if they bring on a project manager who's running that job site instead, so they can focus on the overall growth of the company? What is the impact of their time spending it on a job site versus spending it in the office and running 10 job sites?
Right. Okay. That sounds like it could be a challenge to explain sometimes.
It is a challenge, that's for sure. It is definitely challenging. If it were easy, everyone would just do it. Great, of course, now I need to go do it. Exactly. It is not, just because I can explain it simply or make it a straightforward sounding process doesn't make it easy.
Yeah. So in this, because I know this is a big part of what you're doing all the time, what do you see as the biggest hurdle for business owners? I mean, just in general, it's one thing to set a goal. Sure, we can identify the actions we're going to be taking to achieve that goal. What's the common pitfall that probably occurs over and over again that you have to kind of pull people a little bit forward from?
Focus. Because it's very easy to say this is the goal and you've identified these things, but then when the emergency comes up and you're like, okay, great, I need to go tackle it myself. Focus. Is that really what you can? Again, sometimes the answer is yes, they absolutely should step out of the office to go handle that. But it's where are they focusing? Where is their attention? Because when they lose sight of that because they get pulled in different directions, again, it's not because they can't solve all these problems that are happening. Of course they can. They're the expert at it. But it's keeping an eye on the bigger picture is probably among the biggest issues that we see. When they get dragged down into the weeds, and they can no longer see where they're really trying to go as a whole, or they lose sight of it in the day-to-day because of all these things keep popping up. That's probably among the biggest hurdles that we see for these types of growing companies.
So that sounds like it's a matter of having the right people in place and trusting them to do the thing you hired them to do.
Absolutely.
In most cases. Like you said, there are situations where you have to go, and they would be, this is construction. It's a dangerous work environment. If somebody is injured, you probably need to get there, right? So it's a matter of understanding the severity of the emergency and how important it is that you, as the leader, the ultimate decision maker, is there versus the manager you hired to run that site.
Absolutely. But also, again, it comes to they're spending their time here. It's understanding where they are spending their time and understanding the difference between where they are spending it versus where they should be.
Okay. So let's talk about goal choice, right? Because in any business, literally any industry, there are 100 different things that you could choose to go for. And as an insider, like as a leader of a business or someone in the business, you see what you're doing, you see what you think you're good at, you see what you think your clients value you for. How often is your perspective as an outsider, right? Initially you come in, you're getting to know the business, what they're good and bad at. How often or what role do you play or would Viv play in helping identify an appropriate goal or direction? Or do you leave it up to the business leader?
So it's both, is the short answer. As in, yes, we want them to actually go through it, and they need to go through this. But it is then asking the questions of, is this the right goal for you? Yes, you put this down over here. And again, for some growing companies, the answer could just be, I want to be able to afford this. That's one of my goals. And it's not that that's a bad goal. Again, that's important to this person. You can't dismiss it and say, no, you should have a different goal. It's their goals. It's what they're trying to do. What we very often found in the process is not a question of wrong goal or right goal. It's being able to frame the goal correctly that allows them to actually do something about it. Their goals are their goals to set. It's not very rarely our place to say, no, that's the wrong goal. Your goal should be this instead.
So absolutely, right? The business coaching, it is about helping them achieve the goals they want to achieve. The reason I asked you that question is, as an outside, like an outsourced CFO, you do have a certain perspective on business that most people aren't going to have. And the members of your team have levels of experience that most human beings will never have. And so there just is a different perspective. And that's why I asked the question, are there times when you're like, maybe this isn't the best use of your resources today? But that's fair. That's fair. If you're helping people choose, follow the road they want to follow.
We do get involved in those conversations, though, yes. And the answer becomes, again, exactly the way you said it. It's not a question of our choice to say this is a right goal or wrong goal, or you should be focused on this instead of this. It's all in framing what it is they're really trying to do. Because if they say maybe you shouldn't be doing this, the business owner is thinking of this goal in terms of what they're trying to build 10 years out, whatever the longer, bigger picture type of thing is. From our perspective, it becomes, okay, is that really what your goal is? Or is that a step to get you to the goal, for instance? Is that really what your goal is? Or is that just the outcome that you think you want right now? And the answer can be yes, no, again, the answers will vary. But that's why I said it's more about the clarity of being able to state what those goals actually are, separate from what the measurable target is. For instance, we always have to hear about these revenue targets. So first of all, they very often, as we stated earlier, they list them as a goal. So no, there's a difference between a revenue target as a goal. But even the revenue target, what does that mean to you as a business owner? Why do you want to have a $10 million company, a $50 million company, a $100 million company? What does that mean to you? What is that goal you're really trying for? Is it lifestyle? Is it legacy? Is it brand recognition? Is it, what are you truly trying to achieve when you just throw these numbers around as a measurable target? It's understanding that's driving these business owners. Again, makes it more actionable, brings it down to something that they can actually chart a path to, and actually something that they can actually go ahead and achieve.
So that is kind of interesting, right? Because as the owner of the business, there is an impact on your personal income.
Of course.
If you grow your revenue by 50 or 150%, right? You're going to have to add some new expenses to your business to get there, but you may have a better lifestyle. Are you accepting that of the leader and then trying to tie it back to other specific business goals? Because it's if you're at 5 and you're trying to get to 50 million, there's a lot of operational change that's going to have to happen, right? So how challenging is to bring that reality into that process? Do people accept it, or do they fight you?
So again, when they just throw a number around, that's when we get into more of the why. Why this number? What does this number mean to you? If it is truly lifestyle, then it's going through, okay, great. You want to have this kind of lifestyle. What does that actually mean? Yes, then these are the steps we can actually take to help you achieve this lifestyle that you want. You want to be able to pay for your kids' college. You want to be able to pay for your grandkids' college. Whatever it is that's driving them when they say they think of lifestyle. What does that actually mean to them? So yes, because we've grown companies before, because we've all been CFOs before and actually done this for many companies of all shapes and sizes and industries of all manner, we've actually been able to say, yes, if you want to get to 50, it's not as simple as just great straight line, this type of thing. This is the likely challenges you will run into. This is what you're going to need to invest in from a systems and processes perspective. This is what this will look like. You have to get really clear on what those steps will be. And it's never a straight line path. Great. Here's your checklist of items. Go ahead and go do it. I'll check back with you.
Right. Are you able to give people a vision for, well, you said something interesting just a second ago. So here's what it's going to look like, right? Because it's setting a revenue goal, building your business, whatever you have to do to get there, and then you achieve it. It doesn't necessarily mean that your day-to-day life as a leader now is like super simple. I just kind of look around, people are all doing things, it's all productive and it's done. Right? Are you able to give them a vision for a day in the life of a business owner at 50 million versus a day in the life of a business owner at 5?
So, fortunately or unfortunately, very often the day in the life of a business owner at 5 and the day in the life of a business owner at 50 is as varied as there are businesses that have 5 million or have 50 million in revenue. Okay. So, a day in the life of is perhaps the wrong way to look at it. It's more about what should, again, going back to where we were having this conversation. You as his business owner, you as his business leader, you as an executive, where should you be spending your time? And the answer very often will change between 5 and 50. When that actually shift happens will vary based on that business owner's experience and expertise and the management team that he will bring in around them as he grows.
Got it. So let's talk a little bit about the workshop that is potentially being released on December 12th, 2021. What are the topics we're covering? What's in it for any attendees? What would they be leaving with?
So the goal of this workshop is for them to leave with the resources to come up with an actionable plan. As in, yes, we're going to go through this process of how you create the goals, how you create these targets, but perhaps most importantly, helping them identify their strategies for their each individual companies, the specific ways of approaching this, and how to come up with metrics that measure their how well they are going towards achieving this. Ideally, we'll give them the tools that they can walk away being able to break this down activity even by quarter for next year. So they can go walk out right now and say, great, I know exactly what I'm doing for the first quarter of next year.
That's pretty powerful. Are there options if they want to have an ongoing conversation about their progress as it relates to these goals over that whatever period of time they establish for themselves?
Yeah, of course. We're around. We're not going anywhere. I know Viv's around. She's not going anywhere. These other resources they have is being available to them as part of the network.
Fair enough. I ask because over this last year, I've had my first real experience with what business coaching actually does and how it actually works. And it has been both eye-opening and encouraging to me to experience it. It's been very powerful. And I've seen the value of an ongoing conversation with someone outside of your organization to take a look at what you're doing, how you're writing these goals, how you're applying your time and your resources to achieving those goals. It does a lot to keep you on track and keep you focused. So I just wanted to make sure. I know Vid is here to help the members, but I know this workshop may be open to people who are not necessarily part of the CMC program currently. So I just wanted to see if that was going to be part of it.
Absolutely. As CFOs, that's exactly what we do very often when we work with our clients.
Right. So is there anything that we haven't covered that's critical to, I feel like we've been having a conversation about really beginning the process of setting goals and making a plan. That is what the CMC is meant to do. It's to help people who want to grow get a little more serious and structured about that growth. But is there anything we missed that we need to share before we wrap this up?
So, obviously, planning is a lot bigger than the 20-minute conversation or so that we've had thus far. Yes. This conversation is more about starting the process or how to think about starting the process within your companies that you're working with. The workshop will definitely provide actionable items that they'll be able to walk away with to have a lot more clarity on what this means for them as they move forward towards next year.
Very good. All right, so Nelson, if they want to reach out to you to learn more about ProCFO Partners, I failed to mention your business name at the top of the podcast today. I apologize, but if they want to reach you, what's the best way to do it?
Sure. Our website is ProCFOPartners.com, and my email address is nelson.tepfer@ProCFOPartners.com.
Awesome. So for the viewers, if you are interested in the workshop, we will be announcing it. Your best bet is to go to cmcnetwork.co. Sign up for our newsletter. You'll have access to all our new content. We drop podcasts about once a week. We have new blog posts coming out all the time, and you'll get alerts about upcoming workshops that we run for our members. Some are open to the outside public, and we would love to have you visit us. I'm Michael Oberther with Supporting Strategies. Thanks for watching.